much of the discussion today focused around the challenges to find early investment one way or another. This came up a lot. How do I find this investment, whether I'm pitching in front of a group? How do I understand where to get money? I'm starting out, I'm putting money out of my own pocket, this sort of challenge. Honestly, it's quite similar to discussions with young investors anywhere. There isn't a lot of money necessarily for early stage organizations, for people who are just beginning. I think one of the things that I've certainly been thinking about is the size of the challenge. People thinking that they need a lot of money because they've got a huge idea, but maybe trying to keep it in perspective and start with something smaller. I think we've seen good examples here of projects that were very locally relevant and very locally rooted, that built on a local problem with a very local solution that may or may not ever be the next IKEA or Microsoft, but that's fine. If it's something that grows into a 50-person business, that's pretty incredible. Very few people ever do that. But again, sort of rethinking the size and idea of where you want to go in perspective, so that tempers the amount of money we're talking about. Prove your business model. I have had several discussions today where, and this is also very true of a lot of young entrepreneurs in the world, they think they have a wonderful idea, and they probably do have a wonderful idea. That doesn't mean they have an understandable business model. And so that would be one, prove your business model. Two, give me perspective. And that I think is true of everyone, not just that you have a business, but prove the actual market itself. How big can this business ever get? And with whom? Really understand your market. Are you talking about solving a problem for women or men? A particular kind of woman or man? Really focus down on your particular product and where it can go. And then I think a third thing would be really be clear on the kinds of partnerships you might want to help test or build a product. A lot of young entrepreneurs seem to feel lonely, like there's no one they can talk to, but there are a lot of others who are trying to do good things around similar topics with similar marketplaces. They're not necessarily competition. They're people that you could partner with, either NGOs who focus on a particular thing or government. They already work with a certain population. Talk to them. See if you can partner to go to a market that already exists instead of trying to build your own. How to find, if you're a small business, how do you finance so you can get to that gap? Well, I think one of the things we talked about today was sort of shared risk funding methodologies. So from the financing side, I think there's a need for people like Impact Hub to bring together the types of people who might want to finance to specifically bridge that gap by creating pooled risk funds. So a funder collective, a funder group, people who together could actually put enough money that it would be 100,000 instead of 80 or 200. And from the actual entrepreneur side, good question. I would be curious how people do it successfully. Again, I would guess it's a matter of business modeling and making sure that they're self-funding from tier 1 to tier 2. I also think that anyone here who's talking about impact investment, if they're talking about a social enterprise or a social business, should consider having both a business and an NGO. Because you can get different kinds of financing for both. And you can have an NGO that owns a business or a business that owns an NGO. And then if you're truly doing impact work, because you're working with disenfranchised women or children or whatever, farmers or people in the forestry industry, like one of the presenters today, then you can find funding to support your NGO to underwrite your business or vice versa. You know, it's interesting if you look at the sorts of VC, social venture capital, and impact capital that's out there in the States. I'm not incredibly deeply familiar with the history of it, but it seems to me, and it'd be worth checking, that there, in the beginning, there weren't social venture capital people. In the beginning, there were venture capitalists who later started to think about other ways they could invest their money, either different kinds of markets or because they felt a social pressure to invest in something that was a little more socially beneficial. So that's one thing. They built a marketplace around pure venture capital that then they decided to reinvest in more socially active things. The second thing that I think I've noticed is there were angel investors who started very small and then became venture capitalists. And so they're very interested in the sort of 1,000 flowers methodology of making many, many, many small bets at early stage investment to help them scale. One of the first major investors in Twitter is a case study in this. A guy that he actually was in the tech industry and he wanted to invest in something and he put all of his life savings, $25,000, into what became Twitter. At the time, he also put in sweat equity. He really worked with them as a small startup. And then he got lucky. It turned into Twitter, and he made a lot of money. And then he reinvested in many, many other very, very early stage startups. So one of his things is helping people connect either, a fairly small venture, $25,000 in his case, to the early stage people. So not a lot of money, not a lot of risk. If you do it many times, one of them is going to be Facebook. Essentially, if you know what the problem is, you can solve the problem. You have to get creative, but focus on what the problems are to unlocking capital. Focus on why it isn't happening, culturally speaking. Not just, oh, we don't have it. We don't have it isn't a question. Hi.
Sorry. I'm just putting it down.
No worries. It's an interactive discussion. Focusing on we don't have it. So yes, you have a problem, but why? And then start deconstructing that to build the market you want instead of, yeah, I realize it's hard. It's hard everywhere.